coalition members identify what actionable steps should be taken today for this connected autonomous vehicle technology of tomorrow. And second, to create a forum where we can easily share updates with each other. Third, really work on CAV issues that cross state borders. And finally, help coalition members separate, I guess I would say, the wheat from the chaff. So basically, with all the conferences, webinars, news articles, research, it's really difficult to understand what to pay attention to and what maybe to pay less attention to. So the coalition is committed to help in those 4 areas. And as we have worked with our members, we have heard from all of you that there's a definite need in those 4 areas. So in response, the coalition has made more of an investment in connected autonomous vehicles by bringing on a new staff member, Jenna Reeder. So Jenna comes to us from MassDOT, where she was the Director of Performance Management Coordination in the Office of Performance Management and Innovation. And in that role, she worked across departments and divisions throughout the agency and partners throughout the state to advance data collection, performance management, reporting and monitoring, congestion initiatives, customer experience, and new technology projects. But wait, there is more. Prior to joining MassDOT, I'm happy to share that Jenna also was engaged with the coalition and supported the coalition's Intermodal Freight Committee as a consultant, working closely with Mary Grace Parker and many of our current members. So to say that we're excited to have Jenna back on board is an understatement. And not only will Jenna's coming on board further enable the coalition to help our members take meaningful actions towards coordinating, implementing, and investing in CAV-related activities, Jenna also just brings a wealth of knowledge about the East Coast, about the coalition itself, and most importantly, an understanding of working at a state DOT. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jenna for some quick background and then the introduction of today's speakers.
Great. Thanks, Trish. Can everyone hear me?
Yep, you sound great.
Great. Okay. So yeah, thank you so much, Trish, for the warm welcome. I'm really excited to be here and working with everyone on this exciting topic. And I'm just going to get right into it. So I'm really pleased to share that we had over 170 participants register to participate today in this webinar, which I think clearly shows that there's an appetite for this topic and a need to be getting together and talking about this. We did widen our invitation list for this webinar beyond the established working group, and that was because, as Trish mentioned, we've heard from so many of you about the need for this, and we also know that these CAV activities are found in lots of divisions in all of the transportation departments. In most cases, there are definitely more than a handful of staff who are tasked with responsibilities related to the CAV planning, policy, investment, and deployment, all that space. And because the topics today were really about focusing DOT's efforts and energy in moving forward and prioritizing, we felt like there probably were folks in all different areas who may not have been intimately involved so far with this coalition working group. So we saw a great response in the participation sign-up, and so it seems like that was a great thing to do. So today we have representation from almost 40 agencies and then another 15 to 20 groups throughout the coalition, and that represent different perspectives and geographic areas of the coalition. And so before we get started, and we know that there's some folks that maybe haven't been really involved with this working group the entire time, I just wanted to give a quick update of kind of what's happened in the last year with this working group. So about a year ago, the coalition hosted a in-person workshop. It was very well attended by all the member states, or many of the member states. We had 15 DOTs there and other transportation agencies. And it really helps to begin this quarter-wide conversation on where DOTs are today, articulate some of the greatest challenges and solutions, and then identify some next steps for both for the coalition as an entity and then the member states, and therefore how the coalition could help those member states. And then another event was held as a webinar in May, and during this event we were able to share some perspectives from the insurance industry and also an example of a small town in South Carolina on some implementation work that was going on down there. And this event also provided an opportunity for 10 agencies to update the group on where they were with their CAV efforts. So when we sort of hold that up next to some of the next steps that were recommended through our workshop in December of 2017, we can see that these two webinars that we've done is sort of the main events that have that the coalition has done this year. We started to check some of the boxes that were identified of things that we wanted to do, both in that we're, as a coalition, convening folks all along the corridor to have some of these conversations, but that also many of our states are moving forward with the tasks and the actions that were identified as sort of important, what to do first, what to do next. But there's a lot more boxes to check. Our workshop summary report, which is on our website, identifies a lot of other activities that we want to get going on. And so we want to keep moving forward and keep thinking about what's next. And we're really hoping that today's presentation might give you some things to think about, both as a transportation agency or things that you could look to us as a coalition to support you in. And at the end of the presentations today, we're going to ask some polling questions, and those should give you an opportunity to share your thoughts and ideas on this topic. And in addition, you can always reach out to us over email or give us a call if you have other thoughts or ideas. We'd really love to hear from you. So with that, we're going to talk about, we're going to get into today's topics. We're really pleased that we have 3 of our member states with us here today, and they're going to talk to us about some recent work they've done in their CAV world. We're going to hear about strategic plans, business plans, capability maturity models, kind of what they're doing to move forward and plan for the future. So we have our 3 esteemed speakers here. Neil Boudreau is from our Massachusetts Department of Transportation. He is the Assistant Administrator of Traffic and Safety and the State Traffic Engineer for MassDOT. He's been with MassDOT since 1995, and he's served in many roles within the Traffic Operations and Safety Management Group. In his current position, he represents MassDOT as a member of the ASHTO Committee on Safety, and he's currently serving as the Vice Chair of the Committee on Traffic Engineering. In addition, he serves as a member of the National Committee on Uniform Traffic Control Devices and as the Vice Chair of the Temporary Traffic Control Technical Committee. He's a member of the Institute of Transportation Engineers. He's been a member for over 23 years and also a member of the American Traffic Safety Services Association, serving as a member of the Innovation Council and as a board member for the New England chapter. So he's a busy guy, and we're glad that he's able to give us some time today. From Florida DOT, we have Raj Ponnaluri. He is the Connected Vehicles and Arterial Management Engineer. Since 1995, when he graduated from Duke University, he's been working in Florida, and over those 23 years, he's developed and deployed numerous programs and projects ranging from traffic engineering and operations, ITS, traffic signal systems, bus rapid transit, transportation plans, TSMOs, statewide arterial management, and connected vehicles. He's also the chair of ASHTO's CTSO's ITS Working Group and the vice chair of ITE's CV Steering Committee. And a lot of his work has been presented at and published at through TRB. So we're grateful, again, as well for Raj to give us some of his time, and we've got a lot to learn from his vast experience. And then last, certainly not least, we have Mark Kopko joining us today from the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation. At PennDOT, Mark manages the Advanced Vehicle Technology Program, and he's currently in charge of all the day-to-day operations related to connected and automated vehicles, including the deployment of dedicated short-range communication and the development of the statewide connected and automated vehicle strategic plan. He is PennDOT's representative on numerous groups and committees like the Connected Vehicle Pool Fund, the CAT Coalition, ASHTO's Connected and Automated Vehicle Working Group, and the Smart Belt Coalition. So he also has a lot to share, and specifically he's going to be talking about their capability maturity model assessment, self-assessment that they recently did, which I think is really interesting. So thank you in advance to all the speakers again for their time, and you have a wealth of experience between the three of you. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Neil to get started on his presentation.
Okay. Thank you, Jenna. All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to go over a presentation on strategic planning for connected and automated vehicles in Massachusetts. So, recognizing that spending a lot of time and resources to develop a strategic plan for connected and automated vehicles was probably not the best way to go, considering how fast the information becomes obsolete with the industry moving at such a fast pace. So we decided to take our efforts and develop a strategic planning document which would help guide us in the right direction, but did not confine us to what was available at the time. So the next few slides will show following recommendations that I have listed here. First of our strategic recommendations was to follow USDOT's vision for a future with connected and automated vehicles versus just having a segregated approach. Autonomous vehicles alone do not fully capture all of the safety and mobility benefits desired when they operate in isolation. A connected automated vehicle presents a far greater roadway safety potential where the driver behavior factor is removed from the mix, and the ability for the vehicles to communicate with one another in the infrastructure will help improve operations. Oops, sorry about that. First and foremost, we want to continue to promote CV AV testing. We want to advance the testing that we're doing now with AVs in Massachusetts, where we currently have 3 companies actively testing on public roadways and a 4th that we are working on finalizing an MOU agreement with. Our process, while formal, allows for companies to come and test their vehicles in a manner that we feel is constructive, but also has measures of safety built in. A number of legislative bills have been filed regarding AVs in Massachusetts, and we have reviewed those at MassDOT and provided comments where relevant. But the desire is not to bring too much regulation to the process that a formal regulated statutes would carry. On test beds, we do have an active testing facility at an old Army base that offers a good test track for early testing on AVs, but it's not the same and involved as some of the other states. We need to figure out how to modify the driver training and licensing requirements, because AVs will change the role of the driver and how that State Department of Motor Vehicles will handle things, such as licensing, registration, safety inspection, and ultimately that driver training. What will the expectations of the operator or passenger be when using the automated driver functions? These are the key questions that we will need to address, and there will certainly be a long period of transition as we move forward. We want to encourage the use of single automated vehicles, but we first must address operating guidelines and how to regulate the zero-occupant vehicle. We want to ensure that we are following a uniform approach across jurisdictional boundaries. The biggest draw initially will be filling that gap for that first and last mile of travel using transit services, and to expand upon paratransit service to reach more disabled and elderly individuals that have been historically underserved. This will also allow us to bring service to more rural and less populated areas. Finally, there is a need to promote partnerships with TNCs so they are working with us and not against us. We want to invest in infrastructure. With a greater reliance on pavement markings, we have to implement a markings management plan to ensure that we have quality markings out on the roadways. We, MassDOT, do have a sign management program to address minimum levels of retroreflectivity on our roadways, but now we need to start working better with the municipalities. While we are aware that many states have invested in outfitting corridors with CV infrastructure, we are starting to design our first SPAT project that will also bring along a connected vehicle functionality. And this will be a 39-signal corridor that's all under MassDOT jurisdiction. We are scheduling to advertise that in 2019. And finally, we must consider investing in the deployment of a network of smart sensors for monitoring roadway conditions and traffic operations as we move forward. Some of the additional strategic recommendations that came out of our plan are as follows. Implement a signal priority strategy for CVs and SAVs. As I mentioned before, we are working on our connected corridor with SPAT now, and that's just the first and hopefully the blueprint for more to come. Provide dedicated lanes for AVs. Potential for hot lane or use in congested pricing, however, this does raise some political concerns, so that one may take a while. Invest in data analytics and cybersecurity. We'd like to use the strong academic backbone of this region to our advantage in this area. And prepare the workforce. We can't leave the change in the future of transportation to just a select few individuals. We need to get our junior folks involved and help us along the way. So now that we've discussed a number of strategic recommendations and we have them drafted up, the next step was to begin to formulate action plans so that we can address some of these in the short term and some will take a little longer to come to fruition. The next few slides will cover what we have included in these action plans. Our initial focus areas were to continue doing what we're doing now, as we have an existing autonomous vehicles working group that was established under Governor Baker's Executive Order 572. But we also want to tie in the connected vehicle technologies to provide a more holistic CAV approach. We want to continue to advance and coordinate policy and supporting regulations that help CV and AV technology development. And MassDOT should continue to take the lead in facilitating testing and working with municipal leaders engaging industry partners. As we advance, we want to be supportive but also smart about how we approach things. We want to learn from whatever states have experienced. Where we are one of the most dynamic academic networks around, we need to foster ongoing research to better understand long-range planning and creative financing options. A long-range direction for DOT, and maybe not in the next few years, but as a DOT we need to start to rethink our strategies around such things as transportation demand management to improve operations, how our design standards may evolve, and understand what changes are needed on major infrastructure projects. What is the future of transit? Does a more point-to-point connected society make use of local transit options less valuable? Trying to figure out how to address the resources needed with this change in the transportation environment. That's the big question. What level of safety benefits can be achieved through integrating CAV technologies? How are we to address cybersecurity risks while at the same time ensuring the privacy of the public? Can we achieve significant operational benefits through widespread CAV deployments? What are the risks of operations? If your laptop or PC can crash and cause you to lose functionality, what does that mean on a larger scale, talking about automated vehicles? And how is the DOT and local DPWs going to prepare for the change in traffic control devices that are needed? Will we be able to fund these changes? Now taking a look at our action items for Massachusetts-specific needs and bringing it back to a global view. We have a number of concerns here that we'd like to address, such as how will the CAVs respond to severe snowstorm events where signs and lines are obscured? What happens at some of our non-standard intersections where we have complicated traffic patterns? How do CAVs live up to the hours of congested traffic conditions where we have no real alternate routes to offer? And due to the small New England state footprint, it is possible to travel through many states in a few short hours. How will the CAV rules be the same between all the states? One of the more important measures that we need to encourage is workforce development. We need to engage our younger workforce and get them involved with CAV technology advancement and not continue to keep this among select few in the supervisory and management level, where it seems to be now. We need to engage students as well at an earlier point so that we can take care of this opportunity to get them involved and encourage them to this study of research. We want to establish partnerships, whether it's public sector, private sector, or universities and research institutions. We need to rely on all of these above to help move everything forward to be successful in our state. Looking at the national level, we're just not partnering with these agencies per se, because they all offer tremendous resources and cast a broad net to capture the best practices and success stories that we can learn and bring from Massachusetts. But we also have to rely on the private and association agencies to help bring us closer together with the industry. There's a lot of overlapping between what's involved in the autonomous vehicle and CV research within these groups. So a lot of the goal of remaining current should be manageable for us. And of course, technology-driven benefits to safety and mobility will have funding availability, especially in the CV arena. On a state and regional level, MassDOT needs to foster a better relationship with other agencies in our own state that will have a vested interest in seeing the CAV technologies advance. We also want to reach out to other states, particularly right here in New England, to learn what is or what is not working for them. And we want to continue to partner with the I-95 Corridor Coalition to get more of that regional viewpoint. On the local level, we've had some success. We have a group of 15 local municipalities that have developed a Metropolitan Mayor's Agreement that will allow for the standardization of the testing protocols across all of the partnering communities. We also need to continue that success and work with metropolitan planning organizations to initiate a more focused discussion for land use planning, signal coordination, and the overall impacts of a connected and automated vehicle society moving forward. Other members of the public, we want to engage a host of other entities to broaden our horizon when it comes to identification of potential CAV benefits and potential partners to make that happen. There's always the fear of the unknown, but if we continue to keep our outreach siloed, we're not going to position Massachusetts on the right path to experience the safety and mobility benefits that are available with this technology. Finally, we've started to work together with our New England states and it started looking at what each of the other states are doing. For example, the infrastructure between all our states, we have 22 crossings in the region. Communications are all different. Looking at what's happening in the different states, there are some states that are looking at committees and legislation where MassDOT has ours formed by an executive order. In terms of CV development, we have Hampshire is piloting a commercial vehicle corridor going live in Dover, New Hampshire. Massachusetts, as I mentioned, and Connecticut are planning to participate in the SPAT Challenge, with ours scheduled to advertise in 2019. Overall, AV pilot testing, Connecticut and Rhode Island are pursuing low-speed shuttles, where Massachusetts has 3 companies that have received approval to test and are at various stages. So our success here will be continuing to work with our fellow partner states in the New England area and learning from what's happening throughout the corridor in the United States. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. It looks like we have one question that's come in on the chat box, and we have a few minutes for you to answer questions. So I'll read this out, and you can give us an answer. So it says, this is from Jiri Jindagunta. CA or SAV is expected to know the status of the traffic signal phasing and adjust the speed of the vehicle, especially slow down to minimize arrivals on red. Recommending signal priority might only complicate overall traffic management, as more and more fire and mass transit buses are impacting the signal operation with either priority or preemption. As more CV and SAV vehicles hit the roads, what will that do? This needs further consideration, in my opinion. Thank you. Is that something that Massachusetts has talked about, Neil?
Yeah, I would agree. It's a challenge if you're trying to promote, in the case of promoting transit and transit signal priority, you do have the impacts of having fire, so your Opticom or your priority systems. I think if you're outfitting the vehicles so that they're understanding the signal operations, there should be a way to operate in the same environment. I'm not 100% sure. I haven't studied it into that much detail, but it definitely raises a very good question to the point where you can't have everyone having priority and having conflicting messages out there. And then I see the next question, if I have time.
Yep.
Next question, we are working hand in hand with the city of Boston on the AV, autonomous vehicle. The city has basically made a statement that they are open for business and looking to engage and work with partners. So it's been a hand-in-hand relationship, which I think has worked out well, and it's the model that was used to expand to that 15 community agreement.
Great, thank you, Neil. And I don't see any other questions coming in. So why don't we move on to Raj, and then we can come back, and if we have questions at the end that get typed in later, we can circle back if we've got time at the end.
Thank you.
You want me to start?
Okay. Yep, go ahead and get started, Raj.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today and make this presentation. I will start with the first slide. So the title of the presentation today is really about Florida DOT's Connected and Automated Vehicle Program, as well as a quick overview of what we are doing with the roadmap that we are preparing, not to mention the capability maturity framework we are pursuing going forward. So with that, I'd like to really introduce this topic mainly because of one of the questions that just came up from Giri. Giri is asking a very interesting question, and the question really has to do with whether we want to focus on a vehicle-centric approach or a multimodal approach. And at least going forward, many states are looking at these programs from a multimodal approach, and in Florida, we are not doing anything different either. So to the main point about what we do going forward, we feel that Florida DOT's program with connected and automated vehicles should be in sync with the other efforts that we have underway, whether it is the TSM&O, the Transportation System Management and Operations program, or the STAMP program, also called the Statewide Arterial Management Program, and I'll touch on both of those. So today I really want to touch on 5 key points. An overview of Florida's transportation system, a quick briefing on how we are approaching the capability maturity model framework for arterial management, and how that framework feeds into the CAV, or the Connected and Automated Vehicles program. I would also like to explain how we are proceeding with the outreach on CAV. There's been a lot of questions from various sides of this program, and we are trying to address this need because there's a tremendous appetite for knowing more about CAV in general and how this is going to impact the various segments within Florida and elsewhere in the nation. So we'd like to really touch on that. Also, we have just about finalized our CAV business plan. It is a very brief document, about 10 pages long. Industry has been very active in providing tremendous input and support to us. And many of the participants in this particular webinar, including the Jeremy Dilmores and the Rick Naporas from our district offices who do outstanding work, and Dr. Hardy, say, from FIU, and Anita from ITER, several of them have been absolutely key to everything that we are doing. So this is really a collaborative effort more than anything else. So a quick overview of Florida's transportation system. First and foremost, Florida is the 3rd largest state in the country when it comes to population. And also, Florida is the #1 in the country when it comes to aging population. And here at the traffic operations section at the headquarters in Tallahassee, we have a dedicated program called the Safe Mobility for Life Coalition, led by Ms. Gail Hawley. So we do take the elder user population element as a very important component of everything we do. In addition to the other aspects, Florida is also the #1, as I said earlier, when it comes to the elder user population 65 and over. Florida is #11 in nation's infrastructure health, but also in terms of the fiscal stability, we are #3. So these details go on and on. I'm not going to read these, except to say that we have a huge transportation infrastructure in the state to maintain. So unlike many other states, which are very focused and more regional in approach, Florida is a pretty large state with 8 districts extending all the way from Panhandle down to Key West. As I mentioned earlier, Florida DOT's program at this stage, the Connected and Automated Vehicle Program, mainly relies on the statewide arterial management program and also on the freeway system, of course, as well as the TSM&O program that we're going forward with. So recently, we felt it is an important idea to approach our district offices and begin having a conversation with regard to what capability maturity model really means to them and how beneficial it is to them as opposed to just doing a routine face-to-face discussion. And as we started exploring, some of the key areas started emerging as being important to the state. In particular, pursuing active arterial management. You go to any urbanized area, the role of AAM is being emphasized significantly. For example, in South Florida region or elsewhere in the state, active arterial management is quite significant due to the urban area concerns and traffic management during the peak period. In addition, integrated corridor management, as is being championed by District 5, Jeremy Dillmore, and several other districts in Florida, that is a significant component of what we are trying to accomplish going forward. The Purdue Signal Performance Measures, which has been recoined as ATSPM, the Automated Traffic Signal Performance Measures, this is taking root in the state of Florida significantly with the EDC, the Everyday Counts 4 program. We also developed several pilot projects on adaptive signal control technology. So we're trying to explore what adaptives mean as a tool in a traffic engineer's toolkit going forward. And last but not the least, really, and the icing on the cake is when it comes to the CAV program. So in the state of Florida, CAV program is just not talking about being the first in the country or advancing the program using technology, but advancing it with a specific reason, and that is safety and mobility. So as we develop these programs, we think about the type of strategies we should adopt. In other words, do the strategies that we adopt, are they in line with the arterial management program and project improvements we'd like to make happen, particularly in building consensus with our local agencies and MPOs. Secondly, what are the priority areas that we want to pursue going forward? Is it just the traffic signal system? Is it coordination? And as Giri has alluded to, is it only a vehicle-centric approach, or is it a multimodal approach? And then identify the specific actions we need to take. We see our initiatives extending well beyond traffic operations. Many of the districts have taught us in central office that we need to expand the horizon and look beyond traffic operations, and that means systems and policy planning through PD&D design, construction, operations, and maintenance, and work program. So there are numerous facets to everything we do when it comes to implementing a comprehensive transportation system in Florida. And last but not the least, once we talk about all these things, what are the specific CAV applications which are ready for implementation, which are ready for being tested, and which are ready for giving the tangible outputs. And then, last but not the least, outcomes in terms of safety and mobility. And that is what leads me to this particular slide. What you see there is a history of, unfortunately, I should say, history of traffic fatalities in the state of Florida over the last 10 years. And it is interesting to see how the trend has gone down but then picked up once the economy picked up as well. Fortunately, there's been a small dip in both the bicycle and pedestrian fatalities. But as our director, Trey Tillender, would say, 652 pedestrian fatalities in 2017 is just about 2 per day. It's just under 2 per day. In other words, every single day, working or weekend, there are 2 individuals on an average who are unfortunately losing lives out there on the roads. So we do take bicycle pedestrian safety as important as much as we do with every other safety aspect. We see that technology has a tremendous role to play in mitigating this crash scenario. So moving towards Vision Zero may sound like hype, but we do believe that unless we take an incremental approach to decreasing these crashes, we will not be able to get there. Even though the often quoted 94% of crashes are due to human error, that number exists out there, even if half of that is true, we would have made a significant impact by bringing down the crashes. And we think that technology has a tremendous role to play. One example we always give is not only about the crashes that have been recorded, but what about all those near misses which could have happened but did not, fortunately for whatever reason? And if there is a way we can identify locations using technology of the near misses and start attending to them and proactively addressing those potential crashes, we probably would make a more organic change in how these issues are being handled. So technology has a huge role to play is really all I'm trying to say. I mentioned at the outset that Florida has a very strong Safe Mobility for Life program, which is focused on elder user population. As I mentioned, Ms. Gail Harley in our Traffic Engineering and Operations Office, she leads a team of professionals who go around the state to elder user communities, talk about safety, and she brings back a lot of valuable information to us. And some of the early research we have in the state of Florida suggests that there is a very interesting scenario developing, and that is even the elder user populations see that there is something to be gained from these technologies. So even though 1/3 of them are very willing, you'll see that about half of them are somewhat willing. And certainly, of course, we cannot always rely only on opinion-based surveys, but this tells us something that there is appetite for technology going forward, and we'd like to leverage that particular opportunity. I mentioned this. I'm not going to repeat myself, except to say that the CAV program is not only identified in our 2017 TSM strategic plan as being one of the primary focus areas, but the statewide arterial management program, we believe, is significant because we can talk all we want to talk about CAV technologies, but if we do not get our traffic signals ready and the ITS equipment ready for CAV, we may be doing another seminar like this 3 years from now and would not have accomplished anything. So our program is really get to the ground and do something and make things happen rather than just keep repeating ourselves. This program is also consistent with Florida DOT's Florida Transportation Plan and other components, including the Strategic Highway Safety Plan. There are numerous strategic documents that are written, but the key point is we are not saying anything different than what others are saying. And most importantly, the program aims to accomplish the goals and objectives and targets which other offices have. For example, if the safety office has a certain target of reducing the crashes, we are hoping that the CAV program would actually help accomplish their goal, i.e. the goal of the Florida DOT, and improve safety in the state at large. This is just a quick overview of what our statewide arterial management program stands for. We adopted the action plan this year. It's available. Both the TSM and the strategic plan and the STAMP action plan are available publicly. If you don't have access to that, do send me an email, and I'll be happy to send you a link or get the documents to you. But you see here that we are focusing on the outcomes and performance. In other words, we do believe that anytime public agencies make an investment, there got to be performance attached to that, not so much as a watchdog as much as we all would like to see improvements for the investments we make. And hence the reason why management would like to know the kind of return on investment that would be generated from many of these programs. We talk about field technologies. We talk about the strategies that we need to adopt. Operations and maintenance. As I said earlier, our district TSM and engineers are absolutely the best in the sense that they not only help us significantly advance the program, but also get to us the information we need to hear about, namely the need for operations and maintenance. We can throw all the technology devices out there, but if we do not have a strong O&M program built into that, we would not be accomplishing much, so to say. What you see on this particular slide is the CAV map that is available on the Florida DOT's webpage. You see the link at the bottom of that, at the bottom of the slide. We added another project just in the last day or two called the Pinellas County SPAC project. So that is definitely missing on this slide. But the key point is we are breaking the projects down into 3 categories: planning, design, and implementation, and operational. As you can see in the green number 1, the US 90 Tallahassee SPAT project has been implemented and operationalized. The Gainesville SPAT project, which is the orange number 2, actually it is under procurement as we speak, so it's technically in the right category. We are also developing a University of Florida aid project. Both districts 2 and 5 are championing a much larger project called the I-75 Frame Project. Jeremy Dillmore, as I mentioned, he's on this call. So they're doing a significant and an outstanding job developing a comprehensive program for providing at least one roadside unit per mile along the entire stretch of I-75 from Gainesville down to Ocala, and then building the arterials into the system with bicycle pedestrian safety focus in the Gainesville region, that is University of Florida area, and then down to Ocala, which is the red number 2, which you see there. Anyway, there's several projects to mention. We also partner with TIA, the Tampa Hillsborough Expressway Authority, which is the Federal Highway Administration's JPO, USDOT JPO project. We are also partnering, and Jeremy Dillmore and them, they do an outstanding job doing a Central Florida AV collaboration with the rest of the agencies. Florida Turnpike Enterprise is developing the SunTracks, which is a significant effort, and we are happy to collaborate with them as well. The slide that you see is really just a a bunch of pictures from our Tallahassee SPAT project. There's not much to say here except that there's a lot of lessons learned, including during the procurement phase. It takes quite some time to go through those, except to say that if somebody wants to pursue a SPAT project, you really have to think about what you want to deploy, what you want to get out of those, what you're expecting at the end of the day, whether you want to stay only with dedicated short-range communication or whether you want to bring in cellular technology or a combination thereof. Do you want to implement your security credential management system? There's a dime a dozen lessons learned in the process. That's probably for a whole different day. But it's a very interesting effort. I think that a SPAT project really helps you to get your feet wet and understand better about what you can and cannot do and what you really want to do going forward. So some of the lessons learned, as I said earlier, procurement is a significant component. How do you want to include your value-added elements, including bicycle pedestrian safety, the type of data collection that you would like to do, what do you want to accomplish from the roadside units, the field fine-tuning with the USDOT map data tool, and last but not the least, now that you implemented SPAT, what do you want to do next? That question always comes up. Is it just enough to see the green, yellow, and red timing or the green speed, and what do you really want to do next? And that's where we start thinking about how to advance these projects. And this is the I-75 Frame project I was mentioning earlier. Both Districts 2 out of Jacksonville, extending down towards the Gainesville region, northeastern part of the state of Florida, and District 5 in the Central Florida region, extending from Daytona out to Orlando and further west. They're championing this project. We appreciate all the help they provide us because this is likely going to be a significant project for years 2019 and 20. And both the districts are in the process of completing their systems manager, I want to say about 50 to 80% through their systems manager efforts. Both districts would be letting this project sometime by mid-2019. But, you know, I mean, given the technology area, we hope to get it done by then. We may be off by a few months, but the whole idea is to get this project started for implementation by late 2019, most certainly by 2020. Here's the I-Street. It's a long acronym. I'm not going to read it. This is a request for information package put out by the University of Florida in partnership with Florida DOT. The most encouraging news about this process is that 23 vendors have reached out to FDOT and University of Florida and have expressed an interest to partner with us. In fact, as I mentioned, Anita, who's on the line as well, their team is beginning to work with us. So are others, and we are trying to implement technologies even in a test mode, if that is the case, in a real-world environment called the city of Gainesville. The traffic engineer there, Emmanuel Posadas, through District 2, Jerry Osher and Pete Vega, they do an outstanding job helping us advance this program. And University of Florida with Dr. Lily Eleftheriado, she's the main person there who are all really helping us move this program forward through testing and evaluation of technologies that can be deployed. With only 2 minutes left, I'm going to move a little fast now. Gainesville SPAT Trapezium, this project is under procurement as we speak. 13 signalized intersections, 7 with there's a total of 27 traffic signals with roadside units and onboard units. And we are hoping to learn more about what other things can be done beyond the that deployment. I won't comment on this project because this is under procurement. Going forward, we just won a $1 million Federal Highway Administration's aid funding to deploy bicycle pedestrian safety applications in the city of Gainesville at the University of Florida campus. We are looking at 13 signalized intersections and 7 mid-block crosswalks. We are hoping to get to test passive pedestrian detection. This project, the concept of operations and systems engineering management plan is just about getting ready to be done. We are preparing an RFP, and we are hoping to release it in the first quarter of 2019 with the expectation that we'll have selection done by mid to third quarter of 2019 and implementation by starting third to fourth quarter of 2019. So this is going to be an interesting project. We appreciate Federal Highway Administration's consideration of our application. Just a couple of things, and I'll stop after that. Statewide CAV workshop, we've been very successful in bringing the message out about what CAV stands for in the state of Florida. What kind of opportunities exist? What type of challenges are we likely to confront? And what kind of roles and responsibilities do our districts want to see? To make the long story short, many of the respondents to our surveys from this word cloud, you can see, they're saying that safety, data, operations, and pilot projects, these are the key things in terms of opportunities going forward. In terms of challenges, obviously funding always stands number one, so that's the reason why it's there at the top. Data, when you get the big data, complex data, more data, what is the data quality? And to be honest, what kind of data are we going to get out of these? How are we going to distribute this data for making decisions? In terms of expectations, the expectation is that everybody wants to see safety and mobility as the key drivers to getting this initiative going forward. Mobility, again, to Giri's question, mobility comes in many forms: vehicle mobility, multimodal mobility. We are looking at multimodal opportunities. Operations is very important, and everyone is interested in knowing what is the future of transportation going to look like. A couple of things, and I'll stop. From the role of a private industry, we see the role for education, in other words, getting the message out about what CAV stands for. Research and development. We are really putting a lot of emphasis on pilot projects, learning from these projects. Each one of these projects has a before and after evaluation component going forward. So we do see that there's going to be a significant and noticeable impact in the medium to long term, though it does take time to see the benefits of some of these things. Local agency participation, NPOs, is absolutely key to everything we're doing, and several districts, and I'd be wrong in naming one or two districts, but they do a significantly positive job in understanding the type of hardware that is out there, identifying corridors for improvements, maintaining that equipment, operating that equipment, and keeping the program going forward is very important. Last slide. CAV business plan. We just about wrapped up our draft CAV business plan. It focuses on 7 key areas, including policies and governance, the type of funding we should look for, education and outreach, not only internally within the department, but also externally. What kind of interaction does Florida DOT want with industry? And like every other state, we would like to embrace this approach, be a partner with the industry in advancing technical standards and specifications. Are we getting our traffic signal controllers ready for accepting these technologies? So we're already making some strides in this area, moving towards, shall we say, developing our technical specifications to ensure that the implementation readiness is going to happen. Last but not the least, we focus on deployment and implementation. Thank you. I apologize for going a couple of minutes overboard. I see a couple of questions here. Joanne, is this a good time for me to take the questions?
Yes, we have time.
Okay, all right, let's do it. Okay, let's see. The first question here is from Daniel. That's not message, right?
No, it's Robert Bell.
Yes, yeah, okay. Robert Bell is asking, the trapezoidal project on board, what type of vehicles? I don't quite get the question, but I guess if the question is about what type of vehicles, we are looking at hopefully equipping the fleet, the public agency fleet, as well as possibly University of Florida, who will do an evaluation of this project or help us with the evaluation of the project. They would probably invite participants to have onboard units in the vehicles. But we're also looking at possibly using smartphones as a way to get the message out. Without promising anything at this stage, we are definitely exploring the possibility of having a smartphone to become an onboard unit. So we are calling it the OBU emulator project, another small-scale version which could be applied here. So to the main point, onboard units would not only be in the fleet, but also be provided to some of the willing participants. But this is an area we have not completely explored yet. I hope that answer is sufficient at this stage. I'll go to the next question from Ms. Singh. In your professional opinion and experience, do you think that there is any CAV technology that is mature enough for deployment? Under what circumstances, if any, would you forego pilot testing? That's a great question. Let's see. It is reasonable to say that the industry is absolutely moving at a pace which many of us would like to move along with. For example, anytime we engage with the vendors and the industry partners, they are more than willing to listen to the specific use cases we'd be interested in. For example, passive pedestrian detection. Until we started having these discussions, some of us did not realize that the industry is not only willing, but making modifications really pretty much in real time. So are there technologies that are mature enough? Probably. I mean, they're definitely maturing much faster than we think at this stage. For example, the forward-looking infrared technology or video detection, or not only counting the number of bikes and pets, but also being able to take that information and push it into a traffic signal controller, and eventually the concept of taking it back to an onboard unit either through a DSRC radio signal or from the cloud. I think all of these concepts are being explored, and some of the demonstrations we are seeing and some of the testing we are doing here in Florida at the Traffic Engineering Research Lab or District 5 Seminole County Lab, we are actually seeing that the maturity is happening much faster than we think. We will not be surprised if we see not only an implementable plan, but a much larger scalable plan in the near future. I don't want to promise too much, but forego pilot testing, I think some of it we are already doing. Even though we're doing some pilot testing, we are already deploying some of these on some of the corridors. And just not Florida. I think many states, several states are trying to do this. So I don't want to sound like only Florida is doing it. I know if Jeremy could speak, he probably would add a lot more language to what I'm saying. I hope I answered the question. I know it's not exactly a precise answer, but I hope it's reasonable enough to the point where it is accurate enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Raj. And I think at this point, Jen, if you agree, we're going to move along to Mark Kopko. If you have more questions for Raj, we will try to get to them at the end of the session. If by chance time does not permit, we'll make sure that any of the questions in the chat box get directed to the appropriate speaker, and they will be answered and included in a Q&A summary that will be also posted along with the slides presentation on the Coalition's website. Are you ready, Mark?
Yeah, I'm ready. Good afternoon, everyone. To start, I just wanted to provide some information, some background on not only Pennsylvania, but also then what the department's doing. So for those that are not familiar with the department, PennDOT operates about 40,000 linear miles of roadway. That's about 1/3 of our total roadway network here in Pennsylvania. A little over 25,000 bridges, 56 transit systems. We have a workforce of just under 12,000 employees. We have 3 different ports in the Commonwealth, 130 airports, 2,100 miles of bicycle routes, dedicated bicycle routes. We have 10.7 million licensed drivers and about 11.9 registered vehicles here in the Commonwealth. So with Pennsylvania, we've been active in the connected and automated vehicle realm for several years now. So this map basically just highlights some of our active deployments and initiatives and things that we have planned. So right now we have 54 connected intersections across the Commonwealth, mainly in the Pittsburgh region, but we also have 8 connected intersections here around the capital in Harrisburg. Over the next roughly 4 years, we have plans to deploy an additional 205 additional intersections, most of which are in the Philadelphia region along the Schuylkill Expressway, I-76 leading in. It's one of the major thoroughfares into the city. We also have proving grounds within the state. We have plans to do autonomous shuttle pilots, autonomous truck round attenuated pilots. Our partner, our sister agency, the Pennsylvania Turnpike Commission, is working on a CV work zone pilot. Excuse me. We have plans to do transit prioritization in the Pittsburgh region with all of the port authorities, the transit authorities, buses in the Pittsburgh regions to do transit prioritization. Additionally, we have AV testing guidance here in the Commonwealth that we issued over the summer. Since then, we've been approving some testers as they go. We have an AV advisory committee legislated by law here, enacted here in this fall, and it will go into effect in the spring. We have an AV policy task force that's been in place for roughly 2.5 years. We're in the process of developing a closed course testing and research facility, PennDOT. We host an annual AV summit, and we're getting ready to develop a platooning program to align with legislation that also passed this past fall. But the big thing today we wanted to talk about was our strategic plan that wrapped up here over the summer. So one of the things that we wanted to do, one of our main goals of our strategic plan, was to make sure it was for Pennsylvania and not just PennDOT. Interoperability and consistency is the key to this technology. So it didn't make sense to look at just one agency. We wanted to develop a strategic plan that was broad enough that it doesn't matter if you're PennDOT, Pennsylvania Turnpike Commission, one of our MPOs, one of our local municipalities, one of our county commissions, wherever it may be. You can take this information and integrate it into your own strategic plans, your own processes, and take away some information. So to do that, we decided to break it down into 9 business areas. So these are listed here: maintenance and operations, design and construction, planning and research, information technology and security, driver licensing, motor vehicles. Pennsylvania is one of 12 DOTs in the country where the DMV actually falls under the DOT. Most of the times it really doesn't matter, but when it comes to AV technology, it's very beneficial to already have those, those expertise, those subject matter experts from the driver and vehicle side in-house, and you have that coordination versus trying to go to a sister agency. We also looked at modal considerations, so from the transit side, policy and legal, workforce development, or workforce requirements, and more of the HR, and then outreach and collaboration. So looking at partnerships, looking at press, that type of stuff. So we took a pretty unique path to get to where we wrapped up our strategic plan, and this basically just gives you an overview of how we proceeded. And I'll go through these steps. So first step that we did was data gathering. So we looked at internal, external, and developed a capability maturity model analysis. So we started internal, and we actually started with leadership. It was important to the department that we get buy-in from the leadership at the top, at the highest level first and upfront. So we actually convened 2 workshops with both PennDOT executive staff and also the Pennsylvania Turnpike executive staff. We want to make sure that they were both aligned. So with that, we basically asked our leadership to set the direction of where they view Pennsylvania currently and where would they like to see us in the future. And basically that set the level of where they want to see us fall in comparison to other states. And basically what it came down to is that our secretary said that she views Pennsylvania as a leader, and she expects us to be a leader, through her tenure and then beyond, with the understanding that, it's kind of hard to compete with, say, a Michigan of the world with Detroit in your backyard and California of the world with the Silicon Valley. But we can still be at the forefront. Pittsburgh is one of the hotbeds for automation, with CMU and other robotics engineering companies in that area. We are considered, one of the main hubs for this technology to actually be fostered and developed. So with that, then we started working through the process and working from top down, meeting with different areas within the department, different areas within the Pennsylvania Turnpike Commission, some sister agencies, so the Department of Community Economic Development, our state police, our insurance federation, We talked to some of our major MPOs, so the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission in Philly and the Southwestern Pennsylvania Planning Commission. That's in the Pittsburgh region. We also met with the Harrisburg area MPO. We met with the City of Philadelphia, City of Pittsburgh. We had discussions with. We went through a variety of different areas to actually have discussions with them to make sure that we had buy-in and input from not only the department but all the public sector entities within the Commonwealth. Then we started doing some gathering from external and developing best practices. So with that, there was outreach to the pilot deployment sites, to activities in Michigan, to the Smart City Challenge winners in Columbus, a couple other areas in around the country. And also we wanted to make sure that we spread it out to international. So we wanted to make sure that we weren't not just lining up with best practices in the U.S., but we wanted to make sure that we lined up with what was happening globally. So there was reach out to both the entities in Europe, the UAE, and some other global entities where we basically tried to find out where the best practices are occurring, what are they doing, what are some of the early successes, and then take that and figure out how Pennsylvania can build upon that. And finally, we conducted a capability maturity model analysis. So I'll touch on this a little bit later, but we basically looked at the 6 dimensions that are existing, modified them slightly to make it work specifically for connected and automated vehicles. But we took a unique approach where we broke them out. We decided to do a separate connected vehicle CMM from an automated vehicle CMM. And we did that for a couple reasons. One of the big ones is that the main focus for both initiatives are slightly different. Now, we both agree that at the end that we ultimately will probably see a connected automated world, a cooperative automation be the end result. But where we are at right now as we're progressing, we view them as 2 separate entities on how we actually go about doing things. Although they address the same end goal, our approach that we take is slightly different. So with that, we did a connected vehicle CMM. We went through and we had the actual consultant team do analysis for us. After talking to the key stakeholders within the Commonwealth, they came back and did the assessment. So it wasn't necessarily a self-assessment on our end. They did it, which we preferred it that way because everyone tends to be a little biased on how they go about everything. And you might tend to rate yourself a little bit higher, but at the end of the day, these were the ratings that we came back with. So an overall 1.5 for the connected, with our highest being collaboration at a 2.5. And then on the automated side, we were also getting 1.5, with our highest being culture and collaboration. So once we went through the internal and external information gathering, did our capability maturity model assessment, then we started to identify our gaps. So we knew where leadership wanted the department and the Commonwealth to be. So then looking at those best practices and throughout the country and throughout the world, we started figuring out, well, what do we need to build upon? So they came up with 8 gaps: internal coordination, private sector coordination, establishing guidance, so clear technical standards and other type of guidance with that. Policy and regulation, just looking at our laws, Pennsylvania has one of the newest vehicle codes, but we have some of the oldest vehicle laws. What we like to equate out to is that we have more laws on the books related to horse and buggies in Pennsylvania at 5 than AVs, where we have 1 now. Public sector coordination, funding, how do you get allocated funding? At the end of the day, roads still need paved, potholes still need fixed, bridges still need repaired. How do you balance this in that type of environment? Knowledge, skills, and abilities of our workforce. What do we need to have? What do we need to start looking at as we start proceed forward? And then basically organizational structure issues. Right now, we do a lot of our organization with subject matter experts in a couple of varieties of areas, but there's no clear structure. So with that, then we established a mission and a vision and a mission. So our vision in Pennsylvania is it's a safe integration of connected and automated vehicle technologies within Pennsylvania's transportation system, with the mission of proactively contribute resources to support a safe and sustainable transportation system through adoption of connected and automated vehicle technologies across Pennsylvania. And then with that, we established goals to tie into that vision and mission. So our 6 goals were to improve safety, enhance mobility, prepare our workforce, foster and sustain partnerships, increase public awareness of benefits and risks. We'd like to highlight that it's both benefits and risks. A lot of times we tend to focus on the benefits. As Raj mentioned, 94% of all fatal accidents are due to human error. So there's definitely some positives there that we can get from the safety side, some positives from the mobility side, positives from the environmental side, but there is also risk associated with this technology. There's still a big debate in the industry, and there's probably a good chance that things will get worse before they get better. And it's important for people to know that. We're still learning through things. Technology is still being developed. There's going to be some heartache and some issues along the way, but we hope that at the end the benefits are well worth that. And so it's important to have that education. And then finally, support economic competitiveness. And this is a unique one where this typically isn't something the role of a DOT. In Pennsylvania, our Department of Community Economic Development typically takes this type of role. But because of the cross-cutting nature of this technology, now you're starting to see an area in transportation that goes into different sectors, and it really starts to impact other areas of state government that you really didn't have as much before. There's still impact from a freight side and other activities, but when you start to really get and connect automated vehicles, it's truly cross-cutting. So with our goals then, we establish objectives and recommended steps. So for each of those 9 business areas, there were 5 objectives established. And with those objectives, this is what we consider to be the meat of our strategic plan. We identified a couple of different things. For every objective, you had to identify the foundational needs that were being addressed, identify any existing gaps, identify day one applicable uses. I like to use fiber as a perfect example. We know that a fiber communication backbone is probably going to be beneficial for a connected environment and also an automated vehicle environment. However, if we say from a connected side, what happens if it doesn't come to fruition the way that we're saying? Say 5G beats out DSRC and we don't need to have the same communication backbone that we might have to before, just restructure different areas. Well, we don't want to start deploying a massive fiber network specifically for CV, and it doesn't work out the way that we originally had planned. But we know that it's beneficial, we need to have that there, so we started saying, well, what if we start to identify day one uses? So we know that we have ITS equipment in the field that could use this communication backbone. We know that we have maintenance sheds that need to be tied into district offices. So that's just a perfect example of where we identify a use so that even if something changes and doesn't come to fruition the same way that we expected, because we're using taxpayer dollars, nothing went to waste. We're still getting benefits out of this. We identified recommended actionable steps for every objective. We identified appropriate levels of investment, and those levels of investment isn't necessarily monetary, and I'll touch on that here in a minute. We identified time frames, basically 0 to 5 years, 5 to 10, and 10 plus. We documented any impacts to existing and planned initiatives. We identified metrics for the actionable steps. We provided justifications and basically documented any assumptions that were made. So if we were making an assumption that we were using DSRC, we made sure to document that because we view this to be a living document. So as things change and technology progresses, we can easily go back and see what the assumptions were made and adjust them accordingly to the advances in technology. And finally, we identified what were the impacts to our capability maturity model analysis. So with these objectives, it worked out really well. We were able to get everything on one page for every objective. And the nice thing about this is because there's a variety of different business areas across the department, and instead of having someone have to read the entire report, at a base, I could just go up to each business area, say design and construction, and give them 5 pages. And that's all they need to go through to look at to get a good understanding, a foundational understanding of where they need to be. So this just shows you how it's laid out. It shows how it ties back into the goals, who's the lead. At the bottom, it shows the recommended steps and the metrics and the timetable. For levels of investment, instead of doing monetary, because it's kind of hard to actually predict in the future what's the monetary cost of some initiatives, we basically looked at, well, what's the level of expertise needed? what's the level of training associated with it, and how would procurement actually occur for this type of initiative. And that's where we establish our levels of investment. So a level 1 would be a low expertise, no additional training, and we could probably do this through existing open-end consultant support, while level 4 tends to be highly specialized. Workforce impact analysis is required, and non-traditional procurement methods such as design build, P3, or et cetera, might be necessary. So that's how we went through and actually set up our objectives. So here are the objectives. I'm not going to read over all these. If you go to the department's website, penndot.gov/AV, we have our full strategic plan online. There's a link off the website under the others, or under CAV initiatives subpage. And with that, you can see the objectives. So we have them for maintenance and operations, design and construction, and so forth. Just flip through here for the sake of time. And finally, as part of it, they made recommendations on potential pilots. So the pilots then tie back into our objectives and our goals and our gaps. So with that, there was 4 proposals for pilots, and then underneath those, they were recommendations for potential specific pilots. So the first was low-speed automated shuttle pilots, looking at from a potentially paratransit side or in driverless shuttles and state parks, looking at first, last miles at airports. There was recommendations to do some CV freight applications, looking at curb speed warning systems, identifying some corridors for freight prioritization, looking at outreach pilots, developing awareness campaigns, designating smart corridors, developing a community CAV challenge, trying to get local municipalities involved in this more. And finally, proposed work zones and connected fleet pilots. So looking at deploying truck-mounted, autonomous truck-mounted attenuators in work zones, or implementing a response management CV technology at work zones. So all this then ties back into our actual strategic plan, tying back into the gaps, showing how this would help us move up the capability maturity model analysis too. So I know I went through that quick. I guess, are there any questions? I see that there's one here in the chat box.
Yes,
so right now,
go ahead.
Okay, yep. Does PennDOT plan to update the CAV strategic plan on a somewhat regular basis? If so, annually? Yes, we've used Speed of Living document. We haven't determined how often we're going to go back and examine it. Internal discussions, we're probably going to look at it about 2 years out. Right now, our next step is develop a business plan for actually implementing all the recommendations and tracking, going through the process, working with the different business areas to make sure that we can figure out the low-hanging fruit, to determine what is the first things to start to implement, track everything, and build upon that. But right now, we think that we should be good for another year or two. So we'd probably be looking around the 2020 time frame. And then based off of how much changed since then, that's when we'll determine how often we would actually go back in the future. We got another one that just came in here. Are you associating funding with these actions items to move them into implementation? So that's one of the things that we're going to do with the business plan, is actually to start determining where we want to move with the first low-hanging fruit, start to allocate dedicated funding, whether it be through the department or in other areas, or looking at potential federal grants to help out with other things. But right now, we don't have any dedicated allocated funding for this. One thing that we do have that's, to my understanding, unique to Pennsylvania, as I mentioned, we tried to make sure that the strategic plan was more statewide and not necessarily PennDOT specific. We have a law on the books that it's a Green Light Go law that allows for an 80-20 grant to local municipalities for improving signalized intersections. As part of that law, we are allowed to actually allocate up to $40 million for connected and automated vehicle technology. So if any of the local municipalities want to integrate any part of the strategic plan into what they do, they could go after that grant. In Pennsylvania, is there a state statute that addresses allowing on-road pilots, or is it completely left to city, town, county decision? So in Pennsylvania, how it works right now, I'm assuming that's regarded the automated vehicle standpoint, our legal interpretation of our vehicle code is that as long as there's a licensed driver behind the wheel, they are allowed to operate legally. If you don't have a driver behind the wheel, that's where the way our vehicle code is written and the definition of a driver and so forth, and how that ties in as the overall looking at the vehicle code. We do not believe that's legal at this time. There's been some proposed legislation to change that, but nothing's been enacted with the exception of we're allowed to take the driver out of the vehicle in an active work zone. So if we wanted to actually implement an autonomous TMA, we could do that. Everything that's been looked at from a law standpoint, they looked to do preemption for local municipalities to make sure that PennDOT was a champion. Under current law, the way it's written with our AV legislation, it designates Pennsylvania or PennDOT as the champion agency for AV. With our AV testing guidance, where we issue a letter of authorization to AV testers, that's all done on the department's end. It's only reviewed by the department, not at the city or county or town level. We still coordinate with all of our local municipalities. We view it's important to have that coordination and cooperation, but they're not necessarily involved. And the last question, Mark, could you also share some CAV or CV projects that you plan on deploying in PA without a pilot study?
Yeah.
Does that go back to the previous question?
Yeah, I think that goes back to the question that was asked of Raj. And I think, unfortunately, we're kind of up against the clock, and I know you still have like a whole other presentation to give, so I think you could probably answer these in the question and answer summary, and we'll get that out to everybody.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, I'll move on to the next one. So I was asked to talk about our capability maturity model. So when we did this, there wasn't one at the federal level. There starts to be a CV one, but it wasn't where we needed it to be. So as part of this project, TTI developed an actual capability maturity model analysis for us. For those who aren't familiar with the CMM, basically, to give you some history, CMM understands that processes matter. This determines whether or not a project can actually succeed or fail. You try to prioritize the right actions. You always focus on the weak link. So before you proceed, you have to, once you do your initial analysis, your lowest dimension has to be improved and get to the level of all the other ones before you can proceed forward. So that's where the capability maturity model comes from. And then you have processes. So this was developed more from the software world, was where this was developed from. It gives you guides the agency towards higher levels of implementation, standardization, return on investment, and outcomes should be clear identification of weak links in the process so that you can prioritize areas of improvement, and then you can list off process-oriented actions that the agency can implement. For the sake of time, I'll go through. So AASHTO and Sharp2 looked at this. You can get these slides online for the sake of time. There's a self-assessment from a TISMO standpoint on AASHTO's website, and that's what a lot of it we built off of. So with this, I'll go through these here. Basically, you have 6 dimensions. For those who don't know, the 6 dimensions are business processes. So this is including formal scoping, planning, programming, budgeting, so forth. Systems and technology include systems engineering, systems architecture standards, interoperability standardization. Performance measurements include definition of measures, data acquisition, data utilization. Culture includes technical understanding, leadership, outreach, program legal authority. Organization and staffing includes programmatic status, organizational structure, staff development, recruitment, retention, all that. Collaboration includes relationships with public safety agencies, local government, MPOs, private sector, and so forth. So with this, you have your different levels, and from that, then you go through, you did your assessment, and then you would have basically going through, whether it be at agency level or regional findings, you do your self-assessment, you assess by dimensions, with the lowest level being ad hoc, and then the highest level being fully integrated. And then with those, you can suggest actions for improvement and advancement. Skip ahead here. So with this, we basically broke it down. So we changed it from being ad hoc to being pilots, and then the levels go from pilots to initiated to integrated to mainstreamed. So from a business side, from a CV, the agency is conducting pilots as the lowest level, and the highest level is that a CV program is established, the basis for continuing improvement plan, including a plan, a program, and funding updates have been established. So you can start to see through these slides that there's clear steps on how you can actually progress from level 2 to level 3 to level 4. And I'll quick go through some of these. So systems and technology dimension. So lowest looking to pilot is just basically taking existing applications that are open source and or experimental and then readily available and try a whole suite of things that are not necessarily connected to each other as the system. So this be more, it may be more B2B safety-oriented applications you might start with. And then at the highest level, you can start to get into 1 to 3, but it introduces P3 opportunities to incorporate more innovations or higher-end cutting-edge technologies, more to V to X applications. So I will just go through some of these here quick. So probably the easiest thing for the sake of time. As you start to progress through this, what we tried to do was, we gave this to Joanna, is that we actually have, for you to do a self-assessment, we have criteria that you can actually go through. So for each one of these in our strategic plan, you could go to each dimension, and we start to identify the state of play. So, what is the agency actually doing? Objectives of the guidance for each of the elements. So at that level, what are you actually doing to achieve that? General strategies on how to actually progress. We tied in information on how does that relate to TISMO, because as Raj alluded to here, there's a strong hand-to-hand connection with this, with what existing practices are and versus what they are in the future. And then also we tried to identify any caveats that would go with each. So as you start to progress through, what we did, I mentioned before, was that we had an outside party do our assessment for us, but you could easily file the same information to actually do an assessment yourself, where you could go through and get the right appropriate parties in the room. So whatever you want to do it at an agency level, a statewide level. We did a statewide, once again, because we looked at interoperability and consistency, so we want to look at the whole holistic picture. But you could still break this down by each individual agency or even sub-agency to do this information. And so what you would then do is look at where you are existing and then look at where does that necessarily fall. So, AASHTO has that interactive tool. We don't necessarily have that for this, but with the information that we've documented here, such as what is the state of play in each of these areas, you can actually progress through and say, okay, well, based off of this, we are just piloting right now, or we've started actually integrating some of these pilots, and now we're at level 2. So whether it be from that organization with your workforce, to your culture, to just how you're collaborating with A/B testers or other companies testing CV in your jurisdiction, you can then go through and do your self-assessment to figure out where you actually are. I believe all this information is going to be shared with the group. Is that correct?
Yes, it is correct, Mark.
So as you can see, we try to come up with, and there's additional information in our strategic plan that will be shared, a pretty comprehensive documentation on what constitutes each level, what do you need to do to proceed to the next level, and then once you do your self-assessment, that at least sets a foundation for where you are and how you can start to proceed, so it can function as a metric to evaluate your overall program as you progress. So I guess, are there any questions with that?
At this point, Mark, I don't see any, but what I think we could probably do is move forward to the polling, and if questions come in, and there's time allows, you can answer those questions at the end, or as we mentioned, we'll send them out to you, and then you can, of course, respond, and it'll be in the summary. So thank you all for staying on. This is Joanna again. We're going to have two polls that you're going to see, and we're going to ask you to respond to both because they are, in fact, very similar. They go together. We're asking you to select your top 3 recommended CAV activities, which these were pulled from the December workshop report. What activities should the coalition focus on? And we're asking you for 3. At the same time, you'll see Justin has put up poll number 2. We're saying, okay, if you see those activities and there's not something listed, if you want to type in a short answer and indicate any other activities that weren't included in poll 1, please do so now. So if everyone could take a few moments to answer these. We have 5 poll questions, and these are the first 2. Okay, I think it looks like we're finished. We're going to close the poll now. Okay, and the second one, does anybody still have to add anything? Your responses? Looks like we are done. Okay, we're going to end that one also. Thank you. Our next poll question, has your agency completed a CAV Roadmap Strategic Plan or Business Plan? And your responses are shown. Okay, I think we're finished, Justin. Everyone's finished. We'll close that poll. Poll question number 4. Okay. If your agency has not completed a CAV plan, what are the top 3 reasons? Okay, if you can. So our first one is our leaders are not focused in this area. We don't see a need for this right now. We would like to, but do not have the resources, either internally or to hire a consultant to do it. Or we are planning to, but have not yet started. If there's another reason, we may in fact, Jenna may in fact reach out to you just to get some more information. We'll give this another minute or 2, or excuse me, a few more seconds. Okay, it looks like we're finished on that poll. Justin, thank you. And finally, our last poll question for today. If the coalition could help facilitate the contracting for a CAV capability maturity model, would your agency be interested in learning more about that? Okay, I think that one, we're going to close that now. Justin, I do see a comment in the box asking if we can return to the first poll. Is that possible? Okay, the first poll is open again. Okay, I'm going to close that in 3. Oh, see a little bit more movement. 3 choices. Okay, we're going to close that in 3, 2, 1. Thank you very much to everyone who stayed on and participated in those polls. Jenna, would you like to wrap up the meeting today, or the webinar?
Yes, thank you, Joanna. Thanks for all your help in facilitating this. And we are a couple minutes past our time, so I don't think we have any time for discussion, but I want to thank everybody for great presentations and some great questions. And we will follow up and sort of clean up the questions that were in the chat box and make sure that's posted on our website along with the slides and the recording of the audio part. We are working on our website so that it's going to be easier to find our CAV activities, and so we will make sure that you have the direct link to that stuff. Anyone who participated will get that information out, but it also means that if you come to our webpage, you also should be it should be easier to find this kind of work that we're doing. So hopefully that's helpful. And again, thank you for everyone for staying and participating. And we look forward to working further with you as we keep working in this area.